It's easy to cheer for the rebels, to raise a fist against tyranny and call it justice. But what if the heroes were built on nostalgia and the villains on necessity? What if the empire wasn't born from darkness, but from exhaustion, from the failure of the system that came before? What if peace came at a cost, and the cost was freedom? The Republic wasn't sacred. It was crumbling, fractured, a hollow echo of its former self. Leaders more loyal to lobbyists than to life. Senators trading ideals for influence while entire sectors screamed for help. Jedi stretched too thin to matter. Laws too tangled to function. Promises too fragile to believe. Order didn't come from hope. It came from control. When people starved, they didn't ask for liberty, they asked for food. When planets burned, they didn't cry out for votes, they cried out for safety. And when the Empire arrived, it answered with precision, with structure, with silence. We romanticize rebellion because it feels righteous. We chant for liberty without remembering the chaos that came with it. But the Empire brought roads, power, coordination, a galaxy stitched together by fear, yes, but also by function. And for many, that was enough. This isn't about defending evil. It's about questioning comfort. It's about wondering why the galaxy let it happen, and why so few resisted until it was too late. Because if we're honest, if we really look, the Empire didn't rise through war. It rose through agreement, through applause. In this video, we're going to explore the idea that maybe, just maybe, the Empire was better than the Republic. We'll compare the chaos of democracy to the machine of imperial rule. We'll ask what people truly want when safety comes before freedom. And we'll uncover whether the real villain was the system we were told to believe in all along. The Republic was bloated, slow, and drowning in indecision. It called itself democratic, but the voices of billions were reduced to a few senators playing politics. Every world waited for help that never came, caught in a storm of red tape and false promises. Behind the veil of liberty, corruption festered while the people suffered in silence. So when the Empire rose, it didn't feel like tyranny, it felt like something new, something functional. The clones marched not for power, but for order. Ships arrived when they were needed. Supplies were delivered without debate. Structure replaced chaos. It wasn't freedom, but it was reliability, and for many planets, that was worth more. Palpatine didn't just seize power, he filled a void left by centuries of decay. And when the Empire promised control, millions didn't resist, they exhaled in relief. People remember the fear, but forget the routine. They remember the cruelty, but ignore the stability. There was a rhythm to the Empire, a momentum the Republic never achieved. Where the Senate stalled, the Empire acted. Where the Jedi debated, the Empire enforced. Not everyone saw it as oppression, some saw it as clarity, a cleansing of rot masked as tradition. The Empire tore through the bureaucracy and replaced it with a chain of command that, for better or worse, functioned without failure. It didn't beg for approval, it demanded results, and maybe that's why people joined it willingly. Because they were tired of shouting into the void. Because they didn't want to vote, they wanted to survive. Because when your home is burning, you don't ask who's holding the hose. You just want the fire put out. The Republic pretended to care. It draped itself in peace, but funded wars with backroom deals. While citizens struggled, senators grew rich. While Outer Rim worlds begged for roads and schools, Coruscant debated procedure and policy. It wasn't democracy, it was dysfunction hidden behind hollow ceremony. The Jedi played peacekeepers, but they were pawns, stretched thin by dogma and diplomacy. They walked halls of marble while battles raged across forgotten systems. Their hands were tied by codes older than the galaxy itself, and in the end, they served the Senate, not the people. Planets were abandoned because of politics. Crises were ignored because of committee gridlock. Aid was delayed, justice was denied, voices were silenced, and the worst part, it was all legal. The corruption wasn't hidden in shadows, it was written into the law. The Jedi were symbols of hope, but even they couldn't stop the collapse. They were blinded by prophecy, paralyzed by pride, unable to adapt. They didn't see the darkness creeping in until it was too late, and when the hammer fell, they vanished without a fight. Children were taught that the Republic stood for justice. But those same children watched their villages burn while senators debated funding. Families went hungry while trade disputes dragged on for years. The systems most in need were treated like bargaining chips. Disposable, forgettable, abandoned. There was tragedy in the transition. Good people were lost. Dreams were shattered. But many of those losses began long before the Empire. There were casualties of a Republic that failed them again and again. The Empire didn't create their suffering, it inherited it. The Clone Wars weren't just a galactic battle. They were the final proof that the Republic was unsalvageable. Billions died, not for ideals, but for profit, for power, for manipulation hiding behind diplomacy. And when the war ended, what was left to save? It hurts to admit, but maybe the empire was inevitable. Not because it was right, but because nothing else remained. When everything noble had rotted, all that was left was control. And sometimes, that's the only thing a broken galaxy understands. The imperial fleet stretched across the stars like a metal tide. Massive star destroyers hovered above planets in silent dominance. Every world was monitored, every trade route secured, every outpost supplied. It wasn't chaos, it was coordination on a scale the Republic never achieved. TIE fighters soared in perfect formation. Troopers moved with mechanical precision. Orders traveled light years in moments, and were executed without hesitation. It was more than military strength. It was a machine, and every piece knew its function. Planets once forgotten were now fortified. Transit became safer, trade became faster. Infrastructure appeared overnight. Entire cities rose under imperial supervision. Not every action was cruel, not every policy was evil. There were those who thrived under the Empire's gaze. Palpatine didn't just take the throne, he redesigned the galaxy. His rule was absolute, but it was also efficient. He didn't seek approval, he built legacy. And for many, under his rule, that legacy was the first time they felt seen. It's easy to recoil from the symbols, the flags, the boots, the silence, but look past the fear, and you see something else. A system that functioned, a structure that delivered, an empire that, in its own terrifying way, worked. Even in darkness, people adapted. They built lives, found love, raised children. Under the shadow of the empire, hope didn't vanish, it evolved. It became quieter, stronger, more resilient. Not every imperial citizen was oppressed. Some were simply stable. The rebellion was born not because the empire failed, but because people believed in something better. And yet, many of those same rebels had once served the empire, trusted it, depended on it. They weren't fighting for the Republic, they were fighting for something new. Maybe the lesson isn't about good versus evil. Maybe it's about the dangers of extremes. The empire brought order, but at a cost. The Republic brought ideals, but no delivery. And in the middle, the people just wanted peace. If there's a future beyond both systems, it must blend strength with compassion. It must act without cruelty, and dream without paralysis. It must remember that rule alone is not leadership, and freedom alone is not governance. The empire may be gone, but the questions it raised still echo through the stars. How do we lead? How do we protect? How do we endure? These aren't questions for emperors or senators. They're for us. All of us. The galaxy traded one sickness for another. It watched democracy rot until tyranny looked like salvation. And in that trade, it lost something it didn't know how to recover. Not just freedom, but trust. Not just structure, but soul. Palpatine didn't conquer the Republic. He convinced it to surrender. And when the people cheered his rise, it wasn't because they were blind. It was because they were tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of failing. Tired of a system that had already failed them. The empire was not built on dreams. It was built on ashes. And in those ashes, some found warmth, others found chains. But all of them, for a moment, believed in the illusion of order, in the promise of something that finally worked. The tragedy isn't just that the empire ruled. It's that it had to. It's that the Republic made it possible. It's that justice was so rare, people were willing to trade it for control, willing to forget, willing to obey. And maybe, in the end, that's the real danger. Not that tyrants rise, but that we let them. Because deep down, we're too afraid to be free.